my perspective. We've been working with the fire element the last few weeks, and partially to create some connection with it, some yoga with it. Because when the wildfires started, I definitely found myself wanting to push it away and make it bad and think of it as something wrong. And it's part of nature. It's part of our natural world. And I think that part of what humans are having to reckon with right now is the fact that we've lost a lot of connection and communion and communication with nature. And I feel like the planet is asking us to come back home in a lot of ways. And part of the ways we do that as yogis is by getting more attuned to the Pancha Mahabhutas, the 5 great elements, and how they relate to our bodies as well as the world around us. And fire is such a big, prominent element for those of us on the West Coast right now, because we are literally dealing with the wildfires and the smoke and even like the very primitive biological fear and anxiety that gets triggered by that smell and that sight in the air, and even kind of the super apocalyptic day last week in San Francisco where it was dark all day. And the last week, too, for me has been this big week of transitions and kind of a certain closing of a chapter and not really knowing what's coming next. And it made me think a lot about fire is related to transformation, and part of that transformation is destruction. And humans don't like destruction, right? We don't like endings. We don't like things going away. We don't even really like change that much. There's a part of us that's like, I just want everything to stay right like it is. But we don't really, which is why we change our clothes and we change what we eat. And we actually need kind of this flux and this movement of life, this variety. And we don't like when change kind of comes against what we would desire or order up or want. And fire, in a way, is related to this force of nature that creates change and transformation. And sometimes that change transformation looks like utter destruction. I can remember distinctly the first time someone told me that the caterpillar has to liquefy before it becomes a butterfly. And you can imagine how scary that moment must seem, where it literally has to melt down before it can be reformed and reshaped. And similarly, Shiva, the Lord of Yoga, is the god of destruction. He is a god who, in some of his myths, lives in the cremation grounds. He lives at this place of endings and transitions. And one of my teachers once said that we don't worship Brahma being the creator god, because creation's kind of easy. It's exciting. Think of the beginning of anything, the beginning of your interest in yoga, the beginning of a relationship, the first bites of a meal. The beginning, in a way, has this excitement and newness and freshness that keeps you engaged. Sustaining it, much more difficult. And the sustainer is Vishnu. To keep things going, you got to kind of shore stuff up, build stuff up, find some strategies for sustainability. But destruction, the Lord of Yoga is the Lord of destruction because things get hard when they're in change and in transformation and in dissolution. And that's even true of the poses that we do. People don't get injured going into poses or in poses. They get injured coming out of poses, because that dissolution is where things get difficult. Your mind tends to go elsewhere. You're looking for the next thing. You're not as engaged because you're at kind of the tail end of things, but it's also where some of the real transformation can happen. So our practice this week, again, part of it is my emergency care for my low back and sciatica, but also some of these poses are challenging transitions on the exit and in between things. So the invitation is to stay supremely aware and focused and even meditative, especially on those tail ends of the poses, the movement in and out of poses, and these points of dissolution before the creation cycle begins again. We're gonna start laying down. And you're going to put the block underneath your head on the occipital ridge.